Okay, we'll do a bit of a reality check. A lot of you guys in the audience are entrepreneurs, and none of this stuff's going to matter because you're probably not going to release an iPhone app. If you do, and it works, good on you. But we're probably going to be into more serious stuff, right? So you're going to get an audience, it's going to get lots of traction, it's going to solve a world problem. So then what? Some of this is actually picked up in the Skimlink stuff, so speak to them. If you're looking at the top two and you're not doing iPhone apps, seriously reconsider. There are a lot better ways of making money out of the App Store than just giving away something cheaply or some ads. I won't necessarily cover what they are. You can ask me. What price do you put it at? Well, $2.99 is the price group that corresponds to the average. That means you get £1. And if you play with the price, look, enormous growth, woohoo! So that's a particularly good example of somewhere where they've cut the price halfway through and not only have the users gone up, but the revenue's gone up. Except there's no science in that, although you can try, because actually sometimes that really happens and it does hardly anything at all. There are other combinations where your revenue can go down, but that's less likely. What about ad-supported? A lot of apps on the iPhone are ad-supported, and this is because AdMob are really, really good at marketing. No other obvious reason than that, because when you do the maths, you'll see why. So returning users, a typical figure, and again, this is a little bit different from our app, but we've got some other things in there. Generally speaking, only 1% of your initial huge surge of users are actually return. So let's do a bit of maths. So an average free app gets 6.5 times more traction than a paid app. And an average free app, let's say optimistically, people do like 12 sessions before they get bored of it and never use it again. So that's, let's say, roughly 80 sessions. A paid app, let's say a really cheap one, not too cheap, mind you, a little bit less than the average, gives you 70 cents. So for 80 sessions to give you 70 cents, you need a CPM of $8.75. I'm pretty sure those weren't the figures we saw in the monetizing presentation we saw earlier. In fact, really, if you're not in a position to negotiate really good deals or do something more specific, you're actually going to get something a bit more rubbish.
Geoff, are you disagreeing with the previous speaker?
Yeah, well, that's what you're going to get if you play the AdMob style Google links. But I mean, we're entrepreneurs, right? So we'll try other stuff, you know, affiliate and all sorts of other things. But that's just to give you an idea of how most people on the App Store aren't making money, despite what it might say. Can ad-supported pay? Yes, it can. And there's some guys who are really utterly nailing this. Tapulous, or whatever they've now become, who did Tap Tap Revenge, they're doing something really well. They're doing advertising, they're doing kind of co-branding stuff with Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails. There are really good ways of doing this, but it's all about if you improve your engagement, if you improve the CPMs you're getting, you could probably do reasonably well. So final thoughts. They're not really the final thoughts, these are the bleak ones. You can ask me to be more optimistic in a minute. There are definitely still gold rush opportunities in the App Store, and it depends on how long it takes you to make stuff. If you can kick out a really, really cute game that you can do in a few days and you make a small fortune out of it, that's fantastic, that's ideal. But in reality, if you're building something serious and spending weeks and weeks doing it and expecting to make serious returns, then you've already seen that some of the top few apps ever sold hardly make anything. I don't want to trivialize $600,000, but then there's a hell of a lot easier ways of earning $600,000 rather than coding for 6 months. The idea itself is definitely no guarantee, which is bizarrely why we entered this. Marketing is king. Forget the lottery win stuff, it's pretty unlikely. But the main thing I want to focus on is consider the App Store as a long-term play. There's some guys who have done this really well. Pandora at one point were getting a 4 times increase in the number of people who are signing up to Pandora.fm because of the iPhone app. You know, Facebook's app, okay, so they're leveraging existing properties, but 1/4 of the iPhone users now use Facebook's app. So there are some great opportunities for existing startups. There are some great opportunities that you can do yourselves, but really be very, very careful and kind of separate the myth from the reality. Cheers. Questions?
Excellent. Thank you. Geoff, fantastic. Who here, I bet you nobody here has seen as good a presentation on what it's like to actually develop an iPhone app. Questions? Andrew, just down here. Just got time for a couple.
No heckling.
Hi, Geoff. Congratulations on your win yesterday.
Yeah, that was cool.
Seed camp.
Well,
Yeah,
not a win yet,
John.
but that was very good.
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably a question for any other entrepreneur who has a web app but is thinking about going into doing iPhone. Is it something that we should look at bringing in-house, or should we work with an external contractor? And if we're going to do that, who should we choose?
Okay, I'm not going to answer the last question. Are they, Matty? Yeah, Matty's still doing it. Very good. I recommend him. He's very good. Okay, that's a really difficult question. The thing is, a lot of app developers, and that included us when we were still doing consultancy, really see doing client work as a massive opportunity cost. At least some of the more entrepreneurial ones do. So we think, okay, how much are we going to make from the client? 50K. How much are we going to make from this app? Excluding this presentation, of course. Millions. Yeah, we'd be fine to do that instead. So that's one of the problems you've got to face. The other problem is no one's really an expert yet. There's some people who've been doing it for a few years, but Britain's not really that massive for Mac development anyway. It's not like a big scene like it is in the Valley. So there aren't that many people who really know Objective-C well. And the reality of pushing an app to the App Store is, unless you're pretty good with memory management, with being very careful the way you code stuff and be robust against your server data so that apps don't crash, it's actually really hard to push an app out that's pretty much completely flawless. If you're doing your own startup, that's like we are, we'll just say, I mean, we haven't had any problems yet, touch wood, but if we had any problems where the app was crashing, then obviously we'd be motivated to push a launch really quickly. If you're depending on someone who's third party, how quick will they respond? And it's worth bearing in mind the turnaround. If the app itself takes the fix, if your app broke, if the app itself takes maybe 1 or 2 weeks to code, then of course it takes, if you're very lucky, it takes another week to get in the App Store. Can you really afford something to be broken for basically 3 to 4 weeks? Yeah.
Okay.
having said that, of course, in-house is needs more skills. So, yeah.
Good question. Well, one quick question here. I'm afraid we're going to have to move on next. You put your hand up first, sir. Say who you are, where you're from. And by the way, the guys at the back, if you want to just, there's a few seats in the middle here. If people want to just like shove over so people can sit down, that would be wonderful. Go ahead, sir.
Nick Tsunonis, yesnomaybe.com. Do we have to create an app, or can you use an HTML, PHP to develop an app, a web app that runs quite nicely on the iPhone? And can you run it on the app, and can you market it on the App Store?
That's a really good question. I've got two answers to you. We've actually had quite a few customers when we were still in kind of the consultancy sort of arena who came to us and said, we want an iPhone app. And we said, well, hang on a minute, the iPhone can actually look at HTML through Safari. And when you say marketing on the App Store, it doesn't market itself. So most people are actually better off with very simple apps doing it directly within Safari. And bear in mind, Safari is actually much more awesome than you probably already realize. Many of you, maybe you don't know, but it has persistent storage for the HTML5 stuff. It has 3D like transitions using CSS-free acceleration. It's actually pretty powerful. Having said that, though, if you do it in an iPhone app, you can actually just hard code a web view, so it's actually looking at a web view through an iPhone app, so it'll run like dog slow, or something between that and Objective-C, which you can code in maybe a day or so if your web app's pretty simple and get it out that way. But I would say that don't assume the App Store is capable of marketing itself. It can fit into your marketing strategy, but it might not always be the best thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Geoff.